the idyllic college town of Moscow, Idaho, hidden amidst the rolling hills and autumn foliage, a nightmare unfolded. On a quiet street, a chilling scene awaited discovery. A rental home, seemingly ordinary, became a gruesome tableau. 4 young lives, brutally cut short. The victims, Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gunkovs, neighbors, once accustomed to laughter and music, were left reeling in disbelief. The nation watched in horror as the details emerged, painting a grim picture of a crime so heinous it seemed unfathomable. Moscow, Idaho, seemed an unlikely setting for such a tragedy. A tight-knit community where neighbors looked out for one another. The University of Idaho, a source of pride and energy, cast a long shadow over the town. The victims, all students at the university, were known for their infectious smiles and zest for life. Their loss sent ripples of grief and disbelief throughout the campus and beyond. The illusion of safety shattered, replaced by a chilling question: how could this happen here? The investigation began immediately, a race against time to piece together the events of that fateful night. Law enforcement descended upon the scene, their faces grim, their determination unwavering. Every inch of the house was scrutinized, every piece of evidence meticulously collected. Rumors swirled, theories abounded, but concrete information remained elusive. The pressure mounted, the families of the victims desperate for justice, the community desperate for closure. The fear was palpable. The question on everyone's mind: who could have committed such a horrific act? The murders in Moscow quickly became a national obsession, dominating headlines and capturing the attention of true crime enthusiasts across the country. Cable news channels provided round-the-clock coverage, dissecting every detail of the case and fueling speculation. Social media became a breeding ground for theories and conjecture. The constant media attention brought both challenges and opportunities for investigators. While the scrutiny could be overwhelming, the widespread coverage also generated a flood of tips from the public, some of which proved valuable in advancing the case. As the investigation wore on, the victims' families found themselves thrust into the unwelcome spotlight. Friday, November 11th, a night of fun and festivities. The weekend began like any other in Moscow. For the 4 friends, Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee, it was a chance to unwind and enjoy each other's company. Ethan and Zana, a couple known for their infectious energy, planned to attend a Sigma Chi fraternity party. Madison and Kaylee, inseparable best friends, were excited to join the festivities. The atmosphere was one of carefree camaraderie, a stark contrast to the horrors that awaited them. Saturday, November 12th, the early morning hours, while Ethan and Zana celebrated at the Sigma Chi house, Madison and Kaylee headed to a local bar called the Corner Club. Around 1:30 a.m., Madison and Kaylee decided to grab some late-night food from a local food truck called Grub Truck. After satisfying their hunger, Madison and Kaylee ordered a ride-sharing service to take them back to their residence on King Road. They arrived at the off-campus house around 1:45 a.m., their laughter and chatter echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Meanwhile, Ethan and Zana had left the Sigma Chi party sometime after midnight and returned to the King Road residence. A day of dread, the chilling discovery. As the sun rose over Moscow on Sunday, November 13th, an eerie silence hung over the King Road residence. Around noon, a call came in to the Moscow Police Department, reporting an unconscious person at the off-campus house. The caller, a roommate who had slept through the horrific events, was met with a scene of unimaginable carnage. First responders arrived to find a gruesome tableau. 4 young lives brutally extinguished, their bodies bearing multiple stab wounds. Section 4. The Lives Lost. Remembering the Victims. Ethan Chapin, 20, was a triplet from Conway, Washington. Zana Kernodle, 20, hailed from Avondale, Arizona. Madison Mogan, 21, was from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Kaylee Goncalves, 21, also from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was a bright and bubbly spirit with a love for adventure. Madison and Kaylee, best friends since childhood, shared an unbreakable bond. Section 1. A Race Against Time. The early stages of the investigation. The murders sent shockwaves through Moscow, Idaho, a town unaccustomed to such violence. Law enforcement faced immense pressure. The crime scene, a gruesome tableau, held the key to unraveling the mystery. Investigators, their faces etched with grim determination, worked tirelessly. Every piece of evidence, no matter how seemingly insignificant, carefully collected. Section 2. Scoring for clues. The crime scene and evidence collection. The house on King Road became a grim focal point. Forensic teams meticulously combed through the house, their movements precise, their eyes searching for any trace of the killer. Every surface, every object, scrutinized for fingerprints, DNA, or any minute detail that could provide a lead. The evidence collected, from potential murder weapons to DNA samples, was carefully cataloged and sent to the lab for analysis. Each piece, a potential piece of the puzzle, held the promise of bringing investigators closer to the truth. Section 3. A community on edge, fear, rumors, and speculation. As days turned into weeks, the lack of answers fueled anxiety in Moscow. Fear seeped into everyday life, changing the rhythm of the community. Students, once carefree and vibrant, now moved in groups, their eyes darting around nervously. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and speculation. Social media became a breeding ground for theories, some outlandish, others disturbingly plausible. Section 4. False leads and dead ends. The frustrating search for answers. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, the investigation seemed to hit one dead end after another. Every promising lead, every potential witness, ultimately led nowhere. The killer, it seemed, had vanished without a trace. False leads, often fueled by social media speculation, only added to the frustration. The lack of a suspect, a motive, a weapon, only deepened the mystery. Section 5. A glimmer of hope. DNA evidence emerges. Just when the case seemed to have gone cold, a glimmer of hope emerged from the forensic lab. DNA evidence, meticulously collected from the crime scene, provided a crucial lead. The DNA profile, a unique genetic fingerprint, was immediately entered into national databases. The hope was that it would generate a match, leading investigators to the identity of the killer. The news of the DNA match brought a renewed sense of urgency to the investigation. Section 1. A familiar face. The profile and background of Bryan Kohberger. Weeks turned into months. Then, on December 30th, 2022, a name surfaced. Bryan Christopher Kohberger. Kohberger, a 28-year-old doctoral student at Washington State University, wasn't a complete stranger to the investigation. As investigators delved into Kohberger's background, a chilling picture began to emerge. Kohberger's academic pursuits centered around criminology, a detail that sent chills down the spines of those following the case. Section 2. The long arm of the law. The investigation zeroes in the DNA evidence. That crucial piece of the puzzle proved to be Kohberger's undoing. A familial match, a partial link to a relative in a DNA database, pointed investigators in his direction. The net was closing. The walls were closing in. Law enforcement, operating with the utmost secrecy, placed Kohberger under 24/7 surveillance. Every move he made, every interaction he had, was carefully observed, documented, analyzed. The pressure was immense. The stakes higher than ever. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. A search warrant for Kohberger's apartment and office was obtained. A treasure trove of potential evidence awaited. Investigators, faces hidden behind masks, their movements swift and purposeful, descended upon the locations, their every action captured by the watchful eyes of the media. The evidence collected, though not publicly disclosed at the time, was said to be damning. Cell phone records, internet searches, and witness statements all pointed to Kohberger as the prime suspect. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a clear picture of guilt. Section 3. A community relieved, a nation watching. The arrest in the early hours of December 30th, 2022. A SWAT team descended upon a modest home in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. Inside, Bryan Kohberger, the man who had haunted the nightmares of Moscow residents for weeks, was asleep, oblivious to the impending storm. The arrest, swift and decisive, sent shockwaves through the nation. News cameras captured the scene, the flashing lights, the heavily armed officers, the stunned expressions of neighbors peering from behind curtains. Bryan Kohberger, the quiet student, is now the most infamous man in America. In Moscow, a collective sigh of relief swept through the community. The arrest, though not a conviction, brought a sense of closure, a glimmer of hope that justice would be served. The victims' families, their faces etched with grief and a flicker of determination, spoke to the press, their voices trembling with emotion. The nation, captivated by the case, watched as Kohberger, his demeanor emotionless, was extradited to Idaho to face charges. The legal process, slow and meticulous, was set in motion. The trial, a long and arduous journey for all involved, will be a test of the justice system, a search for truth in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Section 4. Unmasking the accused. Evidence and charges revealed. With Kohberger in custody, the prosecution, led by Bill Thompson, has begun to lay out their case. The evidence paints a chilling picture of premeditation and brutality. Cell phone data placed Kohberger's phone near the King Road residence, suggesting a pattern of surveillance. The most damning evidence was the DNA found on a knife sheath. The DNA matched Kohberger's, placing him at the crime scene. The prosecution announced they would seek the death penalty. Kohberger, maintaining his innocence, remained stoic. His lawyer, Ann Taylor, vowed to mount a vigorous defense. The stage is set for a legal battle that will captivate the nation. Section 5. A family's plea. Kohberger's family speaks out. Bryan Kohberger's family, reeling from shock, released a statement to the public. Their words, a mix of sorrow and a plea for understanding. They expressed their deepest condolences to the victims' families, acknowledging the unimaginable pain. Their son stands accused of a horrific act, yet they cling to his innocence. They ask the public to refrain from judgment. The legal battle is far from over. The truth lay buried beneath layers of evidence and heartbreak. Section 1. The wheels of justice turn. Pretrial motions and delays. The wheels of justice, often criticized for their slow and deliberate pace, began to turn in the case of the state of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. The small courthouse in Moscow, Idaho, typically a quiet place for traffic violations and minor offenses, has become the epicenter of a national media frenzy. Kohberger, his once youthful face now aged a little more, has appeared at every hearing, his demeanor a mix of detachment and defiance. The weight of the 4 murder charges against him, charges that could lead to his execution, did little to ruffle his outward composure. Months ticked by, filled with a series of pretrial motions and procedural hearings. Kohberger's defense team, led by the seasoned public defender, Ann Taylor, meticulously challenged every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every aspect of the prosecution's case. Delays, a source of frustration for the victims' families and the anxious community, became commonplace. The prosecution, led by the resolute Bill Thompson, argued for a speedy trial, but the complexities of the case, the sheer volume of evidence, and the defense's relentless challenges slowed the process to a crawl. Section 2. A community holds its breath. The trial date looms as the sweltering Idaho summer gave way to the crisp air of fall. A trial date was finally set. June 2nd, 2025 is etched into the calendars of everyone following the case. The families of the victims, their grief still raw, prepared to face the accused. The national media descended upon Moscow, ready to capture every detail. The courtroom, moved from Moscow, will be transformed into a stage for a legal drama that would grip the nation. Section 4. A battle of legal strategies. Prosecution and defense will clash. The courtroom becomes a battleground of legal strategies, each side vying for the hearts and minds of the jury. The prosecution, relying on their meticulous presentation of evidence, aim to construct a clear and irrefutable narrative of guilt, a story that should leave no room for doubt. The defense, facing an uphill battle against the weight of evidence, will employ a strategy of deflection and distraction, attempting to shift the jury's focus away from their client and towards alternative explanations, however implausible they may have seemed. The trial will be broadcast live across the nation, becoming a spectacle, a real-life courtroom drama that is captivating viewers with its twists and turns, its moments of high drama and quiet tension. The families of the victims, their faces etched with a mix of grief, anger, and steely determination, became symbols of strength and resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. The pressure on both legal teams is immense. The prosecution carried the weight of a community's demand for justice, the victims' families' hopes for closure. The defense, tasked with defending a client accused of a horrific crime, faced public scrutiny and the daunting task of dismantling a seemingly ironclad case. Section 5. The weight of evidence, awaiting the verdict. As the trial begins and enters its final days, the tension in the courtroom will be palpable. The prosecution will probably deliver a powerful summation, urging the jury to hold Kohberger accountable. The defense will cast doubt on the prosecution's case, urging the jury to consider Kohberger's innocence. The jury probably will deliberate for days. Their decision will have life-altering consequences. As the world holds its breath, the wait for the trial to begin. In the aftermath of the trial, Moscow, Idaho, will face the daunting task of healing. The idyllic college town, once vibrant, had been irrevocably changed by the tragedy. The murders left an indelible mark on the town's psyche. Students now approach their studies with a newfound sense of vulnerability. The community seemed more guarded, the weight of the tragedy evident in their eyes. Yet, amidst the trauma, there were glimmers of hope and resilience. Candlelight vigils illuminates the night, symbols of hope and healing. Despite the case finally getting on its way and the mountain of evidence that will be presented at trial, questions lingered, unanswered, mysteries that continued to haunt the families of the victims and fuel speculation in the true crime community. The prosecution, while trying to prove Kohberger's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, has never established a clear motive for the murders. What drove allegedly Kohberger, a seemingly intelligent and academically driven individual, to commit such a horrific act of violence? Was it a case of unrequited infatuation, as some internet sleuths theorized? Or was there a darker, more sinister motive at play, one that the prosecution had been unable to uncover? The lack of a clear motive only adds to the enigma of Bryan Kohberger, the quiet student turned alleged cold-blooded killer. His stoic demeanor throughout the case, his refusal to offer any explanation for his actions, only deepened the mystery surrounding him. The families of the victims, while finding solace in the hopes of a guilty verdict, were left to grapple with the unanswered questions, the haunting possibility that they might never fully understand what drove Kohberger to allegedly take the lives of their loved ones. The search for answers, for a sense of closure, continued, a painful reminder that even in the face of justice, some wounds never truly heal. The murders of Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves left an enduring legacy of loss, sparking a national conversation about campus safety and mental health awareness. Their families, raw with grief, became advocates for change, calling for increased security and mental health support on campuses. They understood that while no change could bring back their loved ones, their advocacy might prevent other families from experiencing the same pain. The legacy of Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee lives on in the ongoing fight for a safer, more compassionate world.